Hi, this is Cheryl Hines from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and you are watching the whole podcast.
Welcome to the whole. I am Rob Sprance.
And I'm Laura Levine.
Our next guest has had the almost impossible job of being the voice of reason to Larry David for almost 20 years. Cheryl Hines is joining us. Hi, Cheryl. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Very good. First of all, congratulations. Season 11 of Curb Your Enthusiasm hits tomorrow. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years.
It is so hard to believe. It is like a weird time machine.
It is. And you know, it's in watching all of them, because it's one of the shows that I rewatch a lot. You know, I'm sure you hear that all the time. But it's in watching it, you can see everyone year after year after year when you watch it, like, change, and everybody changes, and you somehow stay the same, and Larry somehow stays the same, and others do not, and Jeff loses weight and gains weight. So it's interesting. Yeah. Interesting the way that works.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, sometimes Susie's hair is really curly and sometimes it's straight. Well, I mean, Larry, the thing about him is I think he's looked like he was 60 since he was 29. So it's worked well for him.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like, I'm actually glad that now it seems like he has no real end game to it. It seems like he wants to just keep going as long as he feels like to continue to go. And for a while there, it didn't look good. Yeah, he wanted to do other things, and he did. I mean, he took time off, and he wrote Fish in the Dark, a Broadway play that he ended up starring in. So he's pretty amazing, you know. And he also wrote a film that he did with John Hamm, Clear History. Mm-hmm. So he, you know, he's ambitious and he's prolific, and it's pretty amazing. He makes everything look easy because he doesn't talk about it, but he's done amazing things. Mm-hmm. You know, you have Seinfeld, which was a groundbreaking show when it came on. We hadn't really watched sitcoms like that with four. I don't want to say unlikable characters. You know what? We're both New Yorkers. They're New Yorkers. You
can say it. Yeah, New Yorkers.
They're rotten people. Let's be real.
Yeah. And then, you know, and that's one of the best comedies to go down in history. And then he comes back and does Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is all improvised. And we hadn't really seen a sitcom that was improvised before. So he did another groundbreaking show, you know. So he just continues to, you know, show us his genius. I hope he's not listening, but I mean, that's the truth.
I doubt he would be, but I, you know, you compliment him so very well, and you mentioned it's all improvised, but I kind of want to go back a little bit. I mean, you're trained in improv long before this, you know, even came about. So were you part of the Groundlings or one of those groups?
I was, yeah. I went, you know, the Groundlings Theater here in LA. It's on Melrose Avenue, and it's improv and sketch comedy, and you have to go through their whole program, and then you have to be invited to be part of the cast there. So it was a big deal when I got in. It was many years of studying with such brilliant people. You know, Lisa Kudrow was my first teacher there.
Oh wow!
And I just and then some of the people that I went through with, like Will Forte and Melissa McCarthy, and Kristen Wiig was right behind me, but Will Ferrell was right in front of me. So I was around and exposed to these really talented people that inspired me. So
the long answer is. I learned how to improvise at the Groundlings Theater. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, we like long answers. Those are better. And we've had quite a few guests on that have come from the improv world. We had Matt Walsh from Veep, who's from UCB from the other side.
He's
and
great.
and Groundlings is a it was kind of like a minor league for Saturday Night Live. They would go and poach. And so was that kind of your main goal at the time, was you would like to be picked as one of the SNL cast? Was that like one of the reasons why you wanted to do it?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I only knew about the Groundlings because I met one of Phil Hartman's sisters, and she told me about the Groundlings, and she told me that that's where Phil had gotten his start. And then they had, somebody from SNL come and watch one of the shows, and they would tap Groundling members to go audition for SNL. And then a lot of them went on to get SNL, so that was my dream.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It never came. But and then when you look at life and you step back and you think, oh yeah, it's okay. You did okay. You didn't get SNL, and I never even got to audition. And I really wanted to at least audition. I had a lot of friends audition. Some people got it, some people didn't, but I don't know. That was not the path for me.
Yeah, and we have had a few people that came from the SNL world, Jim Brewer and Jay Moore, and not many of them have great stories about the experience. So you may have lucked out.
I might have dodged a bullet.
Oh, yeah, you might have, although it would never feel that way when it happens.
And I think you ended up okay.
Yeah, I ended up okay. At the time, that's also when Mad TV was going strong. And I did audition for Mad TV a lot. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 times. And the last time I auditioned, they were like, look, supposedly, this is all supposedly. I mean, there are probably Mad TV producers out there going, nah. But, according to my agent at the time, he was like, oh, they really want you. They don't want you to take another job until you hear from us. And
that's unfair in a way.
Well,
unless they're paying you.
Well, right. That's why I'm saying they're probably producers going, nah. But so I was like hoping and waiting, and then I never heard from them. And then around that time, I auditioned for Curb Your Enthusiasm. And at the time, Curb was it was just a 1-hour special on HBO. So I didn't even think I was auditioning for a series. It seemed like a really cool project. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know who Larry David was. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll audition.
Yeah, and that, for those people who don't know about that original show, really the concept was it was supposed to be Larry was doing a special on his stand-up. And I think it was Jeff Garland that proposed, we'll follow you around with cameras and get that part of it too. And he thought it was a terrible idea. And he said, well, if we're going to do that, let me make it up and it'll be fake. Yeah. And that's actually how it became born. But you mentioned that Larry makes it look effortless, but it also is effortless. The two of you together, it was just the perfect match. So you don't know him when you go into the audition? Is there an audition? Are you just recommended? How does that originally work?
Well, there was an audition, and my original audition was right before I was supposed to go in was canceled. They were running behind, and they said they're not gonna be able to see you. And I didn't know Larry. I didn't know any of the people involved, and I what I understood was that they were looking for. Should we hold for the sirens, or who cares?
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
Santa Monica, the mean streets of Santa Monica. So they were looking for an unknown actress because they really wanted to blur the line of reality. So Larry was playing himself, and a version of himself, and Richard Lewis was on, and Jerry Seinfeld, and so there were people that people recognized to be real people. So Larry wanted an actress who nobody really knew that people might think, oh, I guess that's his wife, because I don't know her. So my audition was canceled or postponed or whatever they want to call it. And that night I was performing in a sketch comedy show. And the director, Bob Whitey, who ended up directing a lot of the Curb episodes, and he directed that the pilot, the 1 hour special. He saw me and really liked the stuff that I had written, and they brought me in the next day.
That's great.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where, I walked in, even told me, don't touch Larry. Don't
really?
if it seems like you're being fake or false, the audition will be over. So and I was just like, what are they
what is going on?
And they
don't
said,
touch Larry is a very odd note.
Yeah, don't touch Larry. It's like, oh, I didn't have plans to, but now I'm intrigued. But they were like, it's all improvised. There's no script. There's nothing to tell you about this character except that you've heard all of his bullshit before, and you don't really put up with it.
This is pretty. That's a pretty good summary of Cheryl in a way, for sure. For sure.
And that was it. And then when I walked in, I met Larry, and there's something about us. We just clicked.
Yeah, that's great. And so now you're doing the show, and you mentioned the improv, but I kind of want to, and I'm sure you've been asked this a bunch of times, but it really does intrigue me how that process works. So you walk in. Now, we've had people on it before that have guest starred on the show, but never a regular. And it just, how much notes do you get? Do you get a note on the scene? Do you get a note on what the entire episode is going to be to have an idea? Or is it just, this is the scenario and this is how you're going to behave, and that's it?
I don't even get that much.
Wow.
Well, the first 3 seasons I was on, I didn't, Larry writes a story outline. So he writes, it's usually about maybe 5 pages, 6 pages, and just a few sentences for each scene, what the premise of the scene is. But I didn't even get to see the outlines. So
Wow.
I really had no idea what the episode was about. I didn't know what other people were doing. I only knew, that's why, especially the first few seasons, I asked a lot of questions, which in improv, you're not really supposed to ask questions.
All right.
But to play to be in the reality of what was going on, Larry would come home and say, oh, you have to bake brownies with Benadryl in it for Richard's girlfriend. And I'm like, what? Why? So for a while, I didn't get to even see the outlines. And then I told Larry, I said, why can't I see the outlines? And he said, I don't show them to anybody.
Wow.
He said, but, if you promise not to think ahead and try to come up with lines or try to come up with something funny, then I guess I could trust you.
That's great.
And not to tell anybody.
Anybody else? What's going on?
Anybody else, or what's going to happen in the show, because he really likes that element of surprise.
Of course. If anyone would have told you that you were going to be on a show, but we're never going to get a script and never going to get a note and just have to go and wing it, that's got to be terrifying in a way in the beginning, at least.
I saw Jeff Garland talking in an interview, and he was like, sometimes it's 6 of us in a room and they're about to, start filming, and none of us have any clue what we're going to say.
Oh no, we never have any idea what we're going to say. But yeah, sometimes we don't even know what the scene is about. So when you're asking, like, do I get direction on, what my feelings are about what's going on? The answer is no, because I don't even know what's going on. And I think what's fun about Curb is all the characters and their points of view, right? So my point of view is certainly different than Jeff's. So Larry knows if he writes an outline that says, we're at dinner with Jeff and Susie, and Susie berates the waiter. Nobody has to tell us how to react to that, because
Right.
we all are going to have our own, way of seeing it and a way of reacting to it. So we have no rehearsals. And if we do walk through it just so camera crew can see what we're going to do, we talk gibberish.
Wow. That is crazy.
So we'll be like, I might walk over here and ba-da-da-da-ba-boo. And then I'll walk over there and cha-cha. And that's it.
That's awesome. So at what point do you start to get a vibe that you might be part of something special? Like, when is the season done already? I mean, obviously you start getting recognized. I'm sure half the people on this planet think that you're Larry's wife. When do you start to realize that? Wow.
When are people going, pretty
pretty good?
Yeah.
Well, it was confusing at first because my name is Cheryl on the show.
Right.
So, Jason Alexander's a good friend of mine. So we've talked before, and he talked about, when you start getting, I don't want to say the word famous because that makes me sound like an asshole.
No,
but anyway.
A famous asshole. Just say famous asshole.
Okay, you start becoming a famous asshole. And he was like, people still call him George, and people come up to him and call him George. And I said, yeah, it was interesting for me because my character's name is Cheryl. So when people started recognizing me from Curb, they would call me Cheryl, which makes it sound like they know me.
Right. You can filter it out.
Yeah. So if my, name on the show was Dolores, then at least I'd know they're talking about Curb.
Right.
But so for me, it was a little confusing because people would go, Cheryl, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. It's like, okay. I'm like, yeah, me too.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
We go to college together, or, but early on, I went somewhere and I met Ron Howard. This was very early on, and he said, "I love your work."
Oh,
that's when I was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, that's great.
I was just a bartender a year ago. So it was, things like that were exciting.
That's amazing. And, just to stay in that universe of Ron Howard for a minute, weren't you Rob Reiner's assistant at one point?
Yeah, I was.
Wow, no way. Was that long before the improv days, or?
No, as a matter of fact, I was in the Sunday company at the Groundlings when I worked for Rob, and Rob and his wife Michelle would come see my shows at the Groundlings Theater.
That's very cool.
It was so cool. They were amazing. I mean, they still are, but they were so supportive. And I was actually, I was working for Rob. Literally, I auditioned for Larry in the middle of my work day for Rob.
Oh, wow. So you go back. Did he know? Did you tell me you had an audition?
No, I didn't because, because I was an actress already. And it was like, I didn't ever really want to burden those guys with,
Smart.
This town is tough enough. I don't need to tell Rob every time I have an audition. And then when I got it, Rob came into the office one day and he said, "Are you playing Larry David's wife?"
It's like, oh yeah, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I said I am. He goes, "How did that happen?"
That's so cool.
I don't know.
I know. And so is this the first time that Rob Reiner found out just now that you called in sick just for an audition?
I have a dentist appointment, Rob. I'll be back at 2.
Yeah. Is he retroactively going to be mad?
Yeah, he's going to be furious when he hears this. I know he's listening right now. He's going to be so mad.
So as we move on the timeline of Curb a little bit, there came a really major shift in the story, and this kind of, the fact that you don't know the story kind of changes this question a little bit. But when the time came that you guys were separated on the show, Like, I thought it was a small arc. I thought, okay, he's going to do that for a little while, the end of the season, but it just stuck that way. So, like, so you're finding that out at the same time it's happening again.
Yes. Yes. I mean, Larry did call me. He did call me at some point and say, so we're writing the next season and it looks like you're not going to be in it. I was like, well, thank you for the heads up.
Right.
He's like, it's nothing personal. I'm just, I just think it's funny if I date. And so I just want to do that. And I said, no, I get it.
It's like a real breakup.
Oh, I know. It was,
I just want to see other people.
Exactly. I want to see other people. I'm like, okay, well, then I'll also see other people.
That's right.
So it was fine because I ended up, doing other shows and that was fun for me too. And it all worked out. But weird.
Yeah. And then, you wind up having this. It actually works now because you have this whole will they or won't they, Sam and Diane. Meanwhile, it is Sam for real that you're dating. So it's just like this meta universe. But, I was, Leon fills that void well too. But whenever you're back with him, like the whole, and this is definitely something I want to ask you about because you mentioned Seinfeld. You and very few other people will ever have the ability to say that you were part of the Seinfeld reunion, which, is one of my favorite seasons for sure. And you're on that set and you're, because it technically was a little bit of a show within a show within a show.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, how
it was very surreal. And there was that season, there was one scene in that season where, like we said, everything's always improvised. And right before the scene, Larry, I think Larry Charles, directing, somebody gave me a script and said, so in this scene, you go in to audition for Larry and Jerry. Mm-hmm. And I said,
oh, I feel sweaty.
I was so sweaty, Lori. I was like, what? Wait, what? You're just giving me this script now? And they were like, don't worry, you're going to get the part. And I go, no, it's like.
You're going to get the fake part.
And like, as an actress, like I would never just walk in and cold read for Larry and Jerry. And it just was sort of lost on everybody. They were like, it'll be fine. It's like, well, can I have a moment to look over these lines? Like, I don't want to go humiliate myself.
Right.
So it was very meta. It was like, what is reality? And the reality is, because of the way Curb is shot, it's very intimate. It's a lot of TV shows are lots of lights and, it's a big production, but Curb, it's usually not. It's usually, that scene, we were in an office. It was me, Jerry, and Larry. Mm-hmm. So it was just the three of us, and then maybe two camera crew, and then Video Village is, in another room altogether. So we're just talking, and they're just like, okay, whenever you're ready. It's just like, God.
Yeah, because everyone's gonna see that.
Yeah. So I'm auditioning. It was just so weird. But yeah, when we actually shot it, it was crazy because it was the same set. I think they brought out the set. We were on the sound stage.
Wow. So that set still existed
yeah.
Maybe they didn't even close that set. I mean, that's such an iconic one. Maybe they just left it, I
don't know. I don't know how they did it. And
Jerry keeps it in a garage with his Porsches.
Probably so.
Yeah.
And there was a table read, which we don't have table reads on Curb because there's no script.
Right.
But there was a table read scene.
Right.
Mm-hmm. In the show of the Seinfeld reunion.
Right.
So there really was, everyone was really sitting around a table and reading lines. And I'm sitting there with Julia and Jerry and Jason and Michael. And it's just like, what is happening? And then to, be on the set and I'm doing a scene with Jason. It was just,
it
was great. And
very few people,
you could feel your heart racing.
Sure. Very few people are ever going to get to experience that. Like just not even walk on that set. But I mean, it was a mini episode where at the end of it, it turned into be a mini episode. So it was great to see that you were able to be a part of that. Any fan, which let's face it, most people are fans. And if you're not a fan of Seinfeld, you can't admit it now to Larry anyway, but
right. I love Seinfeld. And as an actress, I never got to audition for it, which probably served me well because Larry, I think it was good that Larry had never seen me in his life before I walked in to audition for Curb.
Yeah. And when one of the people that you got to do an episode with is one of my favorites, and which was with Ed Asner, the late Ed Asner, who just passed. And it's, as a Mary Tyler Moore fan for so long, I've loved that show. As a kid, just watching it all the time, was on reruns during the day, and so familiar with it. Like he was still, even then, super sharp and super funny. And, to this day, I still think of that, scene where Larry walks in and he's kind of like kissing you in the ear and everything. It's like, he just seems like the total, like would be the total opposite of the characters that he plays. He just seems like he's just a good-hearted guy.
Who, Ed? Yeah. He was definitely one of those gifted actors, comedic actors who knew what was funny about him. Because he had this distinctive look that if you didn't know him and you looked at him, you would think that he was an angry guy. Yeah. But that's why he was so great on Mary Tyler Moore, because he knew that that's what's funny, is him playing the angry guy. So so even on Curb, he knew what buttons to push to get a reaction from Larry.
It was great. I could talk about Curb all day long, but I do want to bring up some other things that you're involved in. Of course, you do, as somebody, Lori and I have been doing podcasting. This is like 11 years now we've been doing this show. And I just think that the concept that you have a podcast called True Story, Tig and Cheryl True Story, with you and Tig Notaro, who's an excellent comedian in her own right.
So good.
Yeah, and the concept of this is that you guys watch a documentary, and then you review the documentary, and I think it's such a like you just talk about it or discuss it when you're on topic, which is the best part. Is most of the time you kind of drift.
Well, we're mostly at drift,
right?
We don't. Yeah, it has turned into. We do have a funny dynamic because I do like to try to talk about the documentary, and she couldn't care less. And so sometimes we talk about it, and then sometimes, we'll go for 20 minutes talking about something completely different and go, oh yeah, we haven't even mentioned the name of the documentary. So
right.
Can we veer it back?
Just a minute. I know. Well, I mean, you watch the Amanda Knox documentary, and then you have Amanda Knox on.
Well, she DM'd me.
No way. I didn't know that.
Wow.
That's how it happened?
So, yes. And it was interesting because, like you were saying, our style is very loose. We talk about ridiculous things. We talk about who we're attracted to. And at some point during that podcast, Tig was like, what would you say if I was dating Amanda Knox? And I'm like, I don't know. I'd say, come over for dinner. She's like, what? So we had this ridiculous conversation about if Tig was dating Amanda Knox, but it has nothing to do with anything, right? And so Amanda, I just get a DM from her saying, hey, it's Amanda Knox. I heard your podcast. If you ever want questions answered, I'm here for you, or whatever. So I was like,
she probably wants dinner too.
She probably wants dinner. Yeah, because we're sort of brutally honest, and we don't take any of it too seriously, even though we're talking about very serious things. So there's a balance, but but when we were talking about Amanda, the story that she was accused of murder, which is so awful. And then Tig and I were like, but she is like kind of a weirdo, which doesn't help her. So we talked about her being kind of weird. And then when she came on, she was like, yeah, I am a weirdo. I know that. And so it was just fun to talk to Amanda Knox, who's like, yeah, and I know why people think I'm weird, because I just am, and my boyfriend's weird. But it's a fun. It's like another world where you can just talk about things freely. But you guys know that because it's what you do, right?
Of course, yeah. But
you can talk about things freely.
Yeah, there must have been a moment where, until Amanda actually popped on screen, you weren't sure if it was really her. Because I would have been a little like, yeah, sure, you're Amanda Knox. I mean, this is the internet.
Check mark next to your name on my DM.
Right. There's like 37 Amanda Knox 1725 on Instagram.
You know what's weird is I never questioned that.
Wow.
I don't know what that says about me.
I'm going to George Clooney you later. I'm going to be like, hey, Cheryl.
Yeah. Hey, it's Clooney. Hit me up.
Yeah,
George.
So, look, like I mentioned, Cheryl, I could talk to you all day, and I know we have limited time, but we really appreciate it. But I did want to ask, aside from the new season of Curb, which I want everyone to check out, which starts tomorrow on HBO, make sure you watch it. Most people checking out this episode, I'm sure, already on. It doesn't take a lot to get us to watch that one. What else do you have coming up?
Well, I'm shooting The Flight Attendant right now. So
I'm so excited. I love this show.
I know, I do too. So I feel, how lucky I am to get a call saying, hey, do you want to do season 2 of The Flight Attendant? I'm like, oh my God, this is like a dream.
That's amazing.
So it's pretty exciting.
That's great.
Great news for me.
Yeah. And in addition to that, you'll get a script for a change, which is
which is terrifying.
It's true. Now you have to remember lines.
Oh my gosh. It's like I spend so much time memorizing my lines. And Susie Essman and I always, we're always like talking or texting like, oh my God, I have so many lines in this episode. I'm freaking out. So yeah, it's different. I have a completely different orientation to it than most people.
I saw Larry speaking years ago, and they asked him like, how did you come up with this theme? And he was like, well, I really just didn't want to remember lines.
Yeah, that's what I know. I love that. He's like, I don't want to memorize lines. And he goes, and I hate it when I'm acting because I'm thinking while the other person's talking, I got this line coming up. What's my line? I'm going to think about what it is. When do I start talking? And he's like, it's not really, it doesn't help. I said, no, that's not how acting is supposed to go.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, it's true. When you're so used to improvising now, all of a sudden, well, I mean, you've done tons of other stuff. It's not like, you don't know how to read a script and act, but
but it is a shift. Like it is a mind shift. I have to like really.
And there's so much dialogue in The Flight Attendant, and it's season 1.
I know.
You're making her nervous, Laura.
Cheryl, did you see that that clip that went viral of Larry at Fashion Week in the front row with the models walking, and he's just scrolling on his phone, looking down, never looks up?
Which is a Curb episode, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty funny that he was even there. I mean, it shows how much he loves his wife.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was hilarious. But I guess, how mad would we be if the video was of Larry really taking in the outfits?
Yeah, very true. It would be against everything. He's the one guest that I didn't even bother inviting because you shouldn't. I don't want to bother.
Unless you like rejection. Just, he won't.
Exactly. You know what? One thing too, just real quick, we had you mentioned him watching the models go by. We had Rachel Bilson on from the OC and The Last Kiss, and she said that Larry David is her absolute crush, that she would drop anything, like, and to the point where she told a story that he was next door somewhere doing his play, and he was standing outside, and she got all cold and clammy and nervous, and it's just to hear Larry as a sex symbol was just so
interesting,
otherworldly to me.
It is really interesting.
Yeah,
it's
really
yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I want to make sure everyone checks out the new season of Curb, and now make sure you check out the new season of The Flight Attendant when that comes, because you get a lot of Cheryl Hines coming up, and she has a great social media, very active on social, which is very cool too. You can follow her on Twitter at Cheryl Hines or Instagram _Cheryl Hines. We'll have to find the real Cheryl Hines and get that underscore off of there. We'll start a campaign for her.
Okay, thank you, please.
But Cheryl, thank you so very much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for watching The Hole. I am Rob Sprance.
And I'm Lori Levine. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Really nice meeting you.
You too.
Same
We'll
here.
see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, before we go, I just wanted to mention an organization that we feel is very important, and so should you, and that organization is Define American. Now, we are the stories that we watch, and the stories that we listen to, and the stories that we share. This is Define American, a culture change organization that believes if you can change the culture, you can change the world. Through the power of storytelling, Define American aims to humanize conversations around immigrants by consulting on such popular film and TV shows, including Grey's Anatomy and Superstore, to help develop more accurate and honest depictions of immigrant characters. They also work with newsrooms across the country to encourage the use of more inclusive language in the media, and don't we all need that? Define American works tirelessly to create an America where everyone belongs, and they need our support to keep doing this important work. To make a donation or to learn more, visit defineamerican.com. That's defineamerican.com. Check them out. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.